course that you have designed. And the first part was defining happiness, which Johanna Mooney summarized and has put up in our blog. This is why not only just mental, but physically, our mind and body are connected. And now the third is the tips and the strategies. So I am introducing you to summarize what you'd like and how to start off our conversation.
Well, phew, it has quite a journey to get here today, hasn't it? We really have. We've defined happiness about Aristotle's, summary, his definition of happiness with hedonia or pleasure, and eudaimonia, which incorporates our purpose in life. And we've added the newish research-based component of flow or engagement, which is, when we get really into something and we can just kind of lose ourselves in it, right? So that's the definition of happiness, right? And then we've talked about all the different immunological, cardiovascular components that contribute to our happiness, or that are affected by our happiness. I should say that when we're depressed and our cortisol levels are high, we are at risk for a whole lot of different issues, physical health issues that we don't have when we're happier. So our state of mind really does affect our level of happiness. But along those lines, there are all kinds of strategies and techniques that we can do in order to help improve our levels of happiness. And so that's what we're talking about today. And that's really kind of the meat of what everyone wants to know, right? We want to understand the science behind the reason why we act the way that we do. I think that a lot of people really appreciate understanding that. But I think knowing, like, okay, well, 50% of happiness is supposedly biologically or genetically predetermined, right? Mm-hmm. So what can we actually do to change our quote unquote level of happiness, right? And it's interesting, I was preparing for this talk today, and I read a very recent article that was talking about exercise. And they did a research study. I mean, I know people know, like, in the back of your head, exercise makes me happy. But when you're feeling down or whatever, you're like, I just want to sit here and do nothing, right? But this study was so intriguing because it took a group of people who, had a certain level of depression. Okay. And they divided this group of people into 3 different groups. And they put a third of the people in a medication-only group. So they received like SSRIs. Okay. And then they put a third of the people in a group where they received the SSRIs and they also started to exercise. And then they took a group of people and they put them in an exercise-only group, okay? And then they watched them over time, and then they reassessed them. Mm-hmm. And a group of people who they all seemed happier over time, and so they reassessed them after 6 months, and they saw that the people who had been in the medication, they relapsed. 38% of them relapsed. Wow. To be depressed again, to feel those same depressive symptoms. And then for the people who were in both groups, 31% of them relapsed over time. So the medication and exercise, 31% of them relapsed. And interestingly, actually kind of as the researchers said, shockingly, only 8% of people in the exercise group relapsed. So really shocking, because you almost think the medication it almost is a handicap, like, oh, well, it's going to boost our serotonin levels. There's going to be more serotonin in our synapses. And so, the 2 things together are definitely going to make us feel better. But what's been shown in this research is, that the exercise is really, really a strong component of happiness. And so, I mean, we know that I could go through all the different things, the lowering the cortisol and increasing cardiovascular, which increases vagal tone. I could talk about, the endorphin. The point is really that when we exercise, we feel better. We know that. Everyone knows that. And it's been shown long term. And I think that the reason is because when we take medication and we adhere to this medical model that we're in right now, there are always paradigm shifts in the way that we conceptualize of mental illness and mental health, right? And so when we think that we're in the medical model and depression is the result of a decreased supply of neurotransmitters, well, then we think it's kind of out of our hands.
Mm-hmm.
But if our happiness is within our own hands, then we know what we need to do in order to accomplish that level of happiness that we need. And so I